End of the world prophecy number 6. The total collapse of China. As soon as 2030, China as we know it will be gone. Their entire system is in a slow-motion collapse, and there is nothing that can save it. Xi Jinping, leader of the Communist Party that rules China with an iron fist, has become increasingly isolated as he has removed any threats to his rule, whether they were real or imagined. So he is now one man without the vision, knowledge, or advisors to run such a massive country. With the violent lockdowns and continued governmental tyranny, the Chinese people themselves still refuse to try and change the system of their oppression. The Chinese economy is in freefall and will not recover. America and many other countries around the world realized during the pandemic that they must lessen their dependency on China for various necessities, as they were unable to get many medical and health items because America no longer produces them in country. Because of the Communist Party's humanitarian violations and unfair trade deals, many American companies are leaving the country, and with them goes the billions of dollars of revenue for the Chinese economy. Entire manufacturing towns have found themselves permanently out of work as their factories have all closed down, with no possibility of them ever reopening. There is a major housing crisis in China. This has been worsened by the collapse of the country's second-largest construction company, Evergrande, that has filed for bankruptcy. Extreme corruption saw the theft of millions of dollars in funds. As a result, they were unable to pay workers or buy equipment and building materials. Not to mention the numerous amounts of homes and buildings which have collapsed from extremely poor quality bricks, which can be crumbled in your hand, and steel supports, which can be bent by a child. This has resulted in the deaths of many people, not to mention the surviving residents now finding themselves homeless and all their possessions destroyed. For all their saber-rattling and veiled threats of military violence, China is a paper tiger. Their navy is a joke and cannot patrol more than 1,000 miles from their coastline. They only have 2 aircraft carriers, one which is a used floating casino which they tried to convert into a naval vessel. And most of their fleet is nothing more than fishing boats with deck guns. For all their bluster and bravado, China is incapable of launching or engaging in any kind of large or sustainable military campaigns. And with the numerous border squabbles, India is not their friend. America has the most powerful navy on the planet. If China ever attacks Taiwan or becomes a serious threat to any of our U.S. allies, we can end their entire country without firing a shot. Over 88% of China's domestic consumption relies on imports, including 70% of their crude oil, with 60% of everything arriving by ship. All we have to do is blockade the trade route waterways and the majority of their food and energy goes away. Their reserves would be used up within a few months, and the entire country would immediately devolve into chaos and violence as the Chinese people fight each other to survive. And America is withdrawing from being the world police and using our navy to protect the global shipping lanes. This leaves China vulnerable to piracy from other countries along those trade routes. But the real factor that has triggered the total collapse of China started 45 years ago with their one-child policy. In an attempt to control their population explosion, the Chinese government restricted families to a single child. In addition, China's industrialization revolution began at the same time. This saw many people moving from the country to the city for work. This type of modernization also lends to a lowering of the birth rate, as children are a bigger burden in urban populations than they are in rural populations. Thus people tend to have less or no children. China has the world's largest aging population. They do not have enough incoming young people to replace the much larger number of outgoing old people in their economy. And China is generally xenophobic, and no one wants to move there anyway. So immigration is not a solution to their population problem. There is just no longer enough young people to keep the country running. That is why China will no longer exist on the world stage, as their entire economic model is collapsing in on itself. Most indicators point to 2030 as their exit date. Many also predict that this will encompass food production. With a failed economy, the country will not be able to afford to import as much food as they currently do, and there will not be enough people to grow the food needed locally to feed the masses. The only thing that will save them from mass deaths, from starvation and food riots, will be if they return to their agricultural roots like they were before their rapid industrialization shift. But they would have to do that now. And they won't. For America, this just means there will be less plastic crap to buy from Walmart. And since the problems we had in 2020, part of our economic plan has been to reshore manufacturing of the goods we will need should another such national emergency occur that disrupts global supply chains. Here in Arizona, we are in the middle of building a 1,000-acre semiconductor factory complex that will house 2 manufacturing facilities. This is just the start to relieve our dependence on semiconductors from Taiwan. So there is nothing that can save China, especially with a leadership unwilling to try. Just have a nice dinner of orange chicken and rice from your favorite Chinese restaurant, and afterwards go see the fabulous stage performance of Shenyun, China Before Communism, which is playing across America. Say Zaijian, which is Chinese for goodbye. And be sure to subscribe for more doomsday prophecies and other horror, occult, and Lovecraft madness. Until next time, Cthulhu Fatagen.